Hello everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain, where we have deeper discussions from the ones that we've had on our other different podcasts. So whether this is looking through the lens of what it means to be a university student, whether this is learning more about things such as mental health and well-being, or whether it's just figuring out more about what it means to sort of be a graduate and what life looks like for you after that. We've had a lot of great speakers come on and talk about a wide range of different topics, and we've got another great speaker for you today. But as always mentioned, I don't want to do the introductions for them because I think it's best for us to hear from them. So instead, I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker for today, Ransom. Thanks for being on the show. Could we know a bit more about you and what you do?
Thank you so much for having me, Jeffrey. It's a pleasure to be here. A little bit about me. My name is Ransom Onyema. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm a medical student in my third year studying medical radiography. And apart from my medical studies, I'm also a proficient freelance medical content writer. I do a lot of writings on medical articles, research-based projects, scientific-based projects, medical bill content. I work with pharmaceutical or healthcare companies out there, or I work with personal clients out there. So this is I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about two things. I talk about things related to freelance content writer, medical content writer. I also talk about medical talks in general. So this is a little bit about me. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And it's great to see that you do all these cool things, which we're obviously just about to ask you the questions on. We're going to start with the first question, which I think is very important, is you mentioned that you obviously you're studying, but you're also doing medical content writing as well. So the first question we'd like to ask you, Ransom, is how do you find the times, or how do you manage the demands of sort of your studies, but also pursuing a career in content media writing for medical?
I tell people that I give 100% attention to my studies, but regardless of my work as a writer, I give like few percent like content writing, because as I'm growing, as I'm going from level, because I'm in third year, that's how my work decreases. So I don't really have to work for my medical studies or whatever. So I really outsource. Let's talk about like percentage. I give 90% of my work, of my attention to my studies, and 10% of my attention to my content writing. So it's really a very dual job to do. It's very hectic, but I don't know how organic stuff I use it to help to what am I going to say right now is I don't know how I do it, because it's just a natural thing, because here in Africa, we do a couple of things, and also in med school, you see a medical student also doing 3 to 4 jobs just to sustain himself or herself, So I'm kind of like at work because of my skills, and using it to also help myself in school as a medical student, and using it to pay for my bills and all those things. So I use, because I've done a lot of courses, to enhance my medical content writing, and also the courses I do in med school. So I usually balance the equation by at sourcing. That's what I said before. So I give priorities to what's needed. If I want to give priorities to medical education, I give it that time. If I want to give priorities to my content writing at that period, I use it to do that period. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I think it's key, as you mentioned, that, as being a student, it's very key to sort of have that balance of sort of like managing your time, whether it's focusing on academics, whether it's looking, to other spheres as well. To have those like dedicated time slots to know that, if this is when you're going to be sort of doing your revision or your coursework or focusing on your studies, you've got that. And then your other stuff sort of being able to break up your time like that to manage your schedules is a very important thing, especially as a uni student. It's not something, at least, from the people that we've spoken to, from, within our team, something that we always say that it's not something that you can necessarily like copy from someone else. It's not something that necessarily comes as easily as it does to others, but it's all about finding essentially like what is your way to balance all the things that you do and the different priorities that you have.
Thank you.
We're going to go on to the next question, which is all about learning about communicating complex medical information, because we've done a few episodes with different people within the sort of like field of healthcare, and obviously for people who don't, well, in anything, if you're not sort of a specialist in that subject, sometimes hearing certain words or phrases can be quite complicating. And especially as you mentioned, as someone who does medical content writing, you must obviously like think of strategies and ways to sort of like simplify these complex topics for people who may not necessarily have a background in that. So this next question is all about what strategies, or what do you do to essentially help simplify these complex medical topics for a general audience, but making sure that the key and essential details of what you're talking about isn't lost when you sort of simplify?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Jeffrey. To be a very good content writer, you need to know how to conduct some medical terminologies, have a solid foundation in some medical terminology. So for me, as a radiography medical student, I have a solid foundation into medical terminologies. So whenever I make a publications on some, companies I work with or some personal clients, there are a lot of people, like you said, that may not understand, may not be in that field or whatever. So I try to use some simple, terms of medical terminology for, the easy understanding of the audience, because your writing is not going to be only for your background people. You're going to be a diverse audience. So I try to, because of my solid understanding in some medical terminologies and having a very good research skills. So that's what I use these two to balance those equations and write things using some simple terms for people outside my background to understand. Also adhering to ethical standards, because if you're a medical writer like me, there are standards, there are ethical standards you work and you follow. So once I follow all these ethical standards needed for that publication, we'll also add source to bringing forth a readable publication for the audience to learn.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think that's very key because as someone who did environmental science, especially with things like climate change and being sustainable, there is definitely a tendency for some of this information or some of the like keywords and phrases that are saying to get lost in translation. You might see like a lot of companies throw things like net zero or reducing global temperature. I remember in my second year of my undergraduate, we had a whole topic about like what does average global temperature look like to people, because people weren't sure of like what is the Earth's average temperature worldwide. But I think, as you mentioned, it's very important that when you do write those things, it's all about it's all about ensuring that the key message is always there and it's never lost. And I think from hearing from what you've just said, it's very clear that you do exactly that. You ensure that your content is impacting those both with a sort of like medical background, but also those without. Because as sort of like people I'm sure will imagine, one of the worst things ever is or one of the things that people don't like is, when keywords are being thrown around and they sort of don't understand it, but they feel uncomfortable to ask questions about it because they feel that they might be perceived as, not smart because they don't know certain things. But it's clear to see from the work that you do that you're very inclusive and you're ensuring that everyone, whether they've got that medical background or not, can still not only, I guess, learn, but also take in the knowledge that you're sharing with them.
Absolutely. I want to add something. If you want to, like I said before, you're writing to a diverse audience. You should be aware that it's not only people. If you're something related to my course, like radiography, some radiographic equipment and stuff, not everybody that is in 30 radiography is going to understand what you're saying. Is not going to read that stuff. So how would you make that simpler? So for instance, maybe an engineering student can just come across that video, or sorry, come across that content. How do you make the person to, like you said, not to be intimidated, not to ask questions or something? That is what I talked about, having a solid foundation in some medical terminology. So because of my knowledge in adherence to ethical standards and my research skills and solid foundation in medical terminology. I use the necessary keywords to make it simpler for a diverse audience to understand what I'm writing.
And that's so important because when content is made in a way that's like inclusive, it just has a bigger impact, and it's just so much it makes people and like I said, clearly from your channel, it makes people want to come back to learn more, to see more, to learn about new things that they might not necessarily know about, to sort of rebuild any old knowledge, because with sort of anything within any field, arguably, with technology changes, with developments in science, things have changed and can change quite quickly sometimes. So I think it's very interesting, as you mentioned, to say that that by keeping it that as diverse as it is, it allows people to always be able to find a way to digest this knowledge, which is really important.
Absolutely.
We're going to go on to the next question, which I think might be one of the most important questions that we can ask today, which is the inspiration behind your medical content writing. And we'd love to know what inspired you to start writing about medical issues, and how has this experience enhanced your understanding of the field of medicine?
Yeah, first and first, I started my content writing my first year in med school. Like I said, in my third year. So I started writing professionally, getting paid to write for companies and personal clients to work with when I was in my first year. So I would say it was a childhood stuff. I loved writing when I was way back little. And I was writing for people for free. When I was in my high school, people would say, "Hey, come write this." I was doing it free to the extent my brother like sat me down one day. I was like, "Hey, you're a good writer. You need I should don't you think monetizing from your writing skill?" I was like, you know, I thought about that, and I started my writing professionally my first year. That was when I got my payment on Upwork. I was paid for $5 then. I was like a big boy then. Nobody can cross my path that time. I was like flying in the air, like paid internationally from Nigeria. Earning international payments is really amazing. So I had to diversify, according to my in my studies, the courses I do in my school, pathology, pharmacology, endocrinology, neurophysiology. All these courses also helps me, you know, improve my writing abilities. And also I do a whole lot of courses. I have more than 40 certificates. I did on Coursera. I did also on Udemy and other online courses out there. I have over 40 certificates that I did courses on clinical research, medical content writing. I do this courses just to also improve my writing because all my niche right now, I may not meet clients that want my niche, right? Because I write medical blog content to them. Maybe client will come and say, "Hey, I want you to write a W2 project for me. I want you to write this for me. I want you to write that for me." So how do I say I can do this? It's the ability for me to also take courses way beyond my niche, so that if once I come across this project and have ability to tackle all these projects.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it is really interesting, as you mentioned, that you got that your first piece that you got paid for in your first year. I think is very impactful because yeah, I can imagine that for a lot of young people, not even sort of like doing medical, like writing content for their own country, let alone sort of like doing it internationally and getting recognized internationally, would be such an impactful thing. So it's great to see that even from sort of the start of this, you had the people saw the passion was there, the understanding was there, and I think it's also really great that not only with your writing you're not only sort of sharing content for others to sort of gain knowledge and understanding from, but as the sort of question was phrased, that you're all the things that you write about, you speak about, you're then able to use it in a way that it's enhancing and bettering your understanding of your own field, which I think is very, very cool and very interesting.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It's not easy to sorry to add, it's not
No,
easy
no,
to
no.
do all this work to do, studies or writing is works to do, but I don't know how I do it. It's just God's grace that I can balance those two equations.
100%. And I think that that's the key thing is that, if you're very, people say, especially when it comes to business, if you're very passionate about something, you've just got to keep on going. It's not always easy. It's not always going to be sort of like what you might imagine it to be. But it's always about thinking that there's someone we say it within the team that especially when days get hard with running the business, there's always that at least one person that needs to hear the content that you're producing. So whether this is as we mentioned today, whether it's Ransom yourself with the medical content that you're writing, whether it's anyone listening who's got their own business or side hustle that they do, it's very important to think that there's at least one person out there that is looking for the type of content you're planning to do or the content that you do, and it's just about always going back to them, thinking that they're the person that you're essentially you're doing it to help support someone else. And I think especially we've got a business and entrepreneurship podcast called The Hustle Chronicles, and one of the things from speaking from different business owners from there is that clear understanding that if you're only in it, as you mentioned, like for the money, or you're only in it to boost your name or to look good on LinkedIn or whatever, that will quickly die out. But if you are doing it to sort of impact people, to enhance people's knowledge, to give people sort of an understanding in an area they might not know about, to highlight people and give them a space to voice their opinions, that's something that is not only impactful, but it's sort of like a long-lasting thing as well. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to add something. When you talk about there's someone looking for what out there that likes what you're doing as a content writer, I want to add something. Is if you want to move into freelance medical content writing, you have to market yourself, and marketing yourself brings about recommendations from people. A couple of works I've gotten, from the clients I've worked with in the past was through recommendations. So nobody's going to market yourself or you. You have to do it for yourself, because this is how I do my thing. I've been marketing myself apart from my medical studies, and I've been marketing myself as a writer. And I've been getting a whole lot of recommendations from people. Let's say they're looking for this writer, right? So writers. They'll be like, hey, I know Ransom's a writer. Tagging me on that post. That's the essence of marketing yourself. So like I said, grab something off it. Marketing yourself comes about recommendations from people, and also connect with other writers as well can bring up, a couple of, for you to also learn more as a writer.
100%. And I think even just not as a only with being a content writer, but in general, like whether you want to go into public speaking, whether you want to you want to build your own business, whatever it may be, as you mentioned, just learning. I think learning not only how to market yourself well is such a underrated but very powerful skill to have. And especially if you know how to do it when you're quite young, it's something that is very useful. And especially when it comes to sort of like looking for opportunities, whether it's job opportunities or opportunities with your side hustle, looking for it there is so impactful. And it will really help you in the long run. So yes, I definitely agree. Being able to market yourself is something that is so important.
Absolutely.
We're going to go to the next question, which is all about challenges in medical communication. So we, throughout our main different podcasts, we always like to sort of show to people, that it's not always going to be easy, whatever we do, whether it's with our studies, with our passions, with our side hustles, with our businesses, but it's clear that you can overcome them. So with this question, I was wondering if you could share with us some of the challenges you faced in medical writing, but how you've also overcome them to ensure that there's clarity and engagement in the work that you produce.
That's an amazing stuff. Amazing question. So I'm going to talk about 4 challenges. But I'll add, making it up to 5. So the first thing is, um, my environment, here in Nigeria, is really rare to see someone say, "Hey, I'm a medical content writer." So, majorly, my connections of other freelancers are virtually, right? So, I would say environment does matter, and it's there in my country, Nigeria. There are restraints for we the writers. We are not that valuable in the country. If you're in Africa, you should know what I'm saying, because Africa is really not into the writing aspect or something. So for me, I don't let that get to me, right? I try to like push myself way beyond my environment. That's the first thing first. And I get a lot of recommendations from people that watch my YouTube videos and my writings, my publications on Medium, saying, "Hey, I'm doing a great job." And those kind of feedbacks, because I really pay attention to feedbacks and critics from people, and that helps me to increase and help further or improve my writing skills. So having this restraints in my environment, I don't let it draw me backwards, because if I let it draw me backwards, I won't be doing what I'm doing, because I can easily get burned out. So the second one I'm going to say is the client aspect. Like I said, that's also relates to my environment. I've lost a whole lot of gigs, writing gigs, because of I'm an African. And I don't really blame them. To say, "Hey, I hire from Europe. I don't really hire from Africa." I've lost a whole lot of gigs. You know, that was last year. There were thousands of applications that was submitted, and through that email, so I was like, I don't want to submit this through the email, because I'm going to share stories that led me to say this. So the first one is a hiring manager posted on LinkedIn, was like, "We've gotten like 1,000 plus applications and submit applications to this email, whatever, and we are still open for more publication." I was like, 1,000 plus people have already submitted to this email. How is my own going to be found out? So I said, no, I don't want to submit through email. I want to go straight to that hiring manager's team. So I connected with the person on LinkedIn, and I try to like build a relationship with the person before I pitch, because I just don't want to like pitch my writing skills or my writing services. It's like a spam, So I know I don't want to. I just try to like build a relationship with the person. So as long as we're going with the relationship, she really asked me to, I pitched. She asked me to send over my portfolio. So I built my writing portfolio on Medium. So she was amazing, amazing. She was like, "Let's set up a call, to talk." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And the thing that made the client was like, she didn't check out my profile that I was in Nigeria. So, and the company Barrington James is a company in the UK that hire freelance medical writers and other writers, in different industries. The name of that company is Barrington James. So we hopped in on a call, and you know, willing to give me the job. And she asked me, she looked at my profile. I was like, "I'm sorry, you're in Nigeria?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Nigeria. I'm not going to lie about my country." So I was like, "I'm based in Nigeria, Imo State, to be precise." I was like, "Oh no, we don't really hire Africans or something." But I wasn't pressurized. I wasn't disappointed, because um, I knew what I could offer to the table. If you don't like where I come from, that's your business. So the couple of clients I work with don't really value Africans, but I don't let that get to me. If you don't like where I come from, that's for you. So environment does matter. Clients do matter. The third one is financial stability, the monetary aspect. If you're not getting paid, if you're not getting, the money you need from your business, it can make you depreciate. Like you say, "I'm not sure I was called to do this." So having the right strategies to move along with your financial strategies or financial management can also help help you manage your finances. I was look, I was, I saw a post that you should know Pamis, right? She's been one of the guest speakers. Yeah,
Oh yes, yes,
she wrote a
yes.
post. Yeah, she wrote a post about how to manage your finances, as a medical student. I read that and also added that to my to-do list, and also one of my friends who's a coach, you know, a stress management coach, and also coaches people about finances, managing your health and whatever. Yeah, we got connected and she sent me some amazing strategies to follow. So how to manage my finances also as a medical student. So that's the third one. So the fourth one would say, I would say your niche. Are you sure that your niche is highly valuable in the society or in everything you're doing? So having the right niche, because there are niches that are really outdated, that people don't really put their thoughts on. So you have to know the latest medical advancement, know the latest trends in medical writing, whatever. So this is how I keep myself up to date in the niches I try to do. So that brings me back to the courses I do to also improve my medical content writing. Because if you dwell on that niche, you can't dwell on a particular niche forever. You need to diversify, So that brings me to the courses I do to help me get updated, reading journals and publications on different kinds of medical journals out there to also keep myself updated in the terms of niches that are highly needed in the community at large.
Thank you. And I think it's, yeah, I think with all four areas that you spoke about, I think it's very clear, you know, it's what the challenges that you've mentioned are things that are very apparent in different communities. So not only, like you mentioned, within sort of like the medical field and writing there, but, with other industries, as you mentioned, you mentioned Parmis was on the episode, and she spoke about sort of her medical initiative that she does with a friend. And she mentioned there, as you mentioned, like sometimes there's that disconnect with your not necessarily your customers, but sometimes when you try to explain to people, certain things, whether it's your business idea or, if you've got an initiative and the people that you're talking to, particularly when it comes to funding and to funding initiatives or paid opportunities, sometimes these people might not be able to always connect to what you're saying because it's not necessarily, sometimes it is, ultimately it's a harsh reality, but sometimes it is because they might feel like your business isn't good or they don't like the idea. Or sometimes it might be because, they're not your target audience. So, I know sometimes we pick up the mic, we'll be pitching to people, our target audience is typically like students in universities. But if I'm pitching to someone who has never gone to university or was a student a very long time ago, they might not necessarily understand some of the issues that students do face, as we sort of mentioned here. So as you mentioned it, there is sometimes that disconnect, but also as you mentioned, knowing your niche and exploring that, figuring out what your niche actually is definitely something that it can be challenging, but once you do know it, it is very good. And there are a lot of documents that can help you find that. There's a lot of like recommended courses that can help you find that. I forgot to mention it before, but as you did mention, I think it is very important when it comes to stuff like, especially like you mentioned, like content writing. Do look up courses and opportunities that you can do. The reason being is because there are so many out there that can support you as a content writer, as a content creator. And for a lot of them, they're usually quite free and they don't necessarily have, like, as you mentioned, like a requirement that, you have to be based in a certain part of the world. There are some that do, ultimately, but there are quite a lot of free ones. And as you mentioned, we've mentioned it on this podcast before, but if you're a Brunel student and you're listening or watching, as a Brunel student, you get access to LinkedIn Learning for free for the whole time that you're at university. Um, you know, There's I've forgotten. There's like other ones as well. I think there's Okumi is another one. There's Google have some courses that you can do for free. So there are a lot of opportunities out there that if you are sort of looking to develop, and there are a lot that do talk about like finding your niche, learning, developing, and growing. One that I will give a shout out to that's been very useful for myself, both professionally and personally, is one by someone called Indie Love Gordon, sorry. And she's been on the podcast. She's a great person. Definitely, I would recommend check her out. But she has this, she recently released this like ebook called Just Do It. It's a 12-week program that's supposed to help you with accomplishing goals. So helping you to get into that feel of when you do try, when people set like New Year's resolutions or things like that, they're very used to sort of like just maybe in January they'll stick to it for a bit. February might sort of die down, but usually by the end of like the midpoint of the year, for a lot of people, their resolutions are sort of left towards the earlier part of the year than the halfway through. But her ebook is really good on helping you to sort of manage that. So coming up with like strategies to not think of your year as you have to do all these goals within 12 months, but to help you to prioritize like what goals can you do first. And I think especially for anyone who's looking to get into content writing, to get into a new space, whether it's business or side hustles or content writing, I definitely would recommend. So yeah, we can include the link in the bio. But yeah, I definitely would recommend. It's a really great book. I found it very useful myself, and she's very open for like comments on it as well. So I definitely recommend if you are interested in reading Indy's book, then please do check it out. We're going to go to the next question, which is all about the impact of patient understanding. So I'd like to ask you, Ransom, in your view, how does effective medical writing contribute to better patient awareness and understanding of their own health?
Wow, that was an amazing question. But I'll just share my own narratives. I do writings on patient management materials, and so I'm just going to share my little experience in that. Um, the work as a medical writer is really, really needed. So that's why AI can't really overtake us. AI is there to just help foster our work to really enhance our writing skills or whatever. So there are some times you can have some writer's block. You can't really craft us some outlines or whatever. So that's the reason for AI. For people that use it for the whole thing, it's not really advisable. It's just there to help you. So the thing is, as a writer, I would say that it helps to foster understanding. I had a guest speaker on my YouTube channel, and she's also a writer. So she was talking about the first patient she had as a third year dental medical student, and the patient that she had during her clinical rotation she's the patient was deaf and dumb, or was like deaf something, but he can read and understand, but he can't talk. So because of her writings, her medical reports, writings, and everything to the patient brought about understanding of what the patient really understood what the lady was talking about. So it really fosters understanding between the patient and the medical writer. That's the first thing first. The second thing is it balances functionality. What do I mean by that is I've worked in the hospital before, during my clinical rotation in my second year as a radiography medical student. There are some times that a lot of people, healthcare professionals working in the hospital, really get really busy or something. So as a writer, it really helped to make the situation like brings about functionality. What I mean is making that how am I gonna put it? To make it, for instance, I'll use an experience is if a doctor is unavailable in my country, right? And how would you tell the patient that the doctor is unavailable. I'm talking about Africa especially. I don't know how it works globally. So it brings about writing reports that explains the reason why the doctor is not available at this time, or is going to be available in the next 3 hours, not to make the patient to get outraged, get really ranting over and over, being angry, to the doctor or the hospital ever in general. So it brings about functionality, breaks down some medical reports that are really terrible. What I mean with that is, as a radiographer, I've seen, my senior colleagues who are ultrasonographers, they do a scan and checking the wherever the baby or wherever on the patient. So the patient don't really understand what's really happening on that ultrasound. They don't really understand what kind of drawings that understand what's the P waves and everything. They don't really understand what's going on. It's through the writings on the medical reports that just dictates and breaks down the themes illustrated on the ultrasound. So I would say medical writers are really, I think we should be highly valued because our work are really, really, really highly needed. So it brings about understanding between the patient and the healthcare workers. It brings about high functionalities. And the third one I'm going to say is time management. It brings about time management because I'll use an example. When I was doing my clinical rotations in American Cancer Hospital in Imo State here in Nigeria, I was talking with I was speaking with my colleagues. We, in radiography, call our people working already in the professional ground senior colleagues. So I was speaking with my senior colleagues, and we were talking about a patient that had a disjoint on the ankle or something. So the patient that was there didn't understand what was really happening or didn't understand the kind of phrases we're using. So as a writer, I did some writings that really explains. So it explains the whole thing. So that is what I can say. It brings about research. It brings about understanding, amongst the patient and the hospital, and it also brings about functionality, and it creates an opportunity for the patient to be highly open to answering questions, to get more clarity on whatever they're doing.
Mental health is really important to us at Pick Up the Mic, and we love to share resources that can support your mental health. And that's why we are so glad to have today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get you started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live appointments when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't right for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at an affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/pickupthemic. I've also linked them down below in the description. So again, that's betterhelp.com/pickupthemic, and start your journey today. 100% agree. And I think that's especially when it comes to medicine. We did a joint podcast with a organization called the Mummy and Me app, which specializes on essentially empowering young mothers, particularly of color. For now, it's currently just based within the UK, and the app's just in development. But the aim of the app is it's supposed to help reduce maternal death rates and sort of improve the statistics on that, because a report came out that women, particularly Black women, are 4 times more likely to die during childbirth as their white counterparts, and women of mixed heritage or Asian women were twice as likely to die during childbirth. So I think as one of the key things that sort of came from speaking to like having a joint podcast with that app and the founder of that app and working with them is that they clearly mentioned that one key thing is this idea of empowerment. And as you mentioned, the only way for patients to truly feel empowered is understanding all of these reports and the information that's being put in front of them, because you'll see all these key terms, these words, these phrases, and you might not necessarily know what they mean. You might not necessarily know what is being told to you, but having all that information is very useful, essentially. So yeah, I definitely agree. It is a very important thing to have, and hopefully, as we, move towards, a better future, having more, not only within sort of the field of medicine, but having those spaces where people can learn more, they can receive like good and accurate information will be very key.
Yeah, because there are some medical acronyms and medical abbreviations that are used in writing some reports for patients. So that brings about a writer really using the skills they have in medical writing to break down those reports for the clients to really understand, grab. Because I'll share a story. My dad had recently had a chest X-ray and a prosthetic examination to check about the hearts and the lungs and whatever in general. So the radiologist was like really explain what the whole thing is, and my dad didn't understand every word the radiologist said. So this is what when I got home, with my dad, I explained using some writers and because there's some medical terminologies used there that my dad don't really understand. My dad is a pastor, by the way, so he didn't understand those medical terminologies. So I was the one to break it down for him because the radiologist didn't know that my dad didn't understand everything he was saying. So as a radiography medical student, I had to, with my writing skill, I had the opportunity to use some simpler terms that made my dad to understand what the whole thing has been happening.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I think as you mentioned it's your story, the story that you just shared is a clear example of why creating these spaces and giving people this information is so not only really needed, but why it's so important. So yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're going to go to the next question that I've got up here, and this is all about future aspirations. So looking to the future, what are your long-term goals, Ransom, as both as a radiography student and as a medical writer? We'd love to know what your future goals are and how you plan to integrate these two aspects. So being a medical writer, but also being a radiography student, how do you plan to integrate these two aspects into your career?
Thank you so much for that question. It's really amazing. So I would say, well, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing because the laxity of the audience out there in terms of medical aspects. That's the reason why I started out my YouTube channel, especially in Africa. We're really lackadaisical in things related to medical. We don't really go for medical checkups until it get worse, something like that. So I just want to use my pace, my little comfort zone, my little horizon to really bridge that gap, of, not understanding, getting the clarity, using medical, whatever. So as a radiography medical student, I'm not looking forward to being a radiographer. I'm looking forward to being a radiologist. Right? There's a difference between being a radiographer and being a radiologist. I'll tell you the difference. A radiographer is not a medical doctor. A radiographer is a radiation scientist. They call it RAD, whatever it is. So the doctorate aspect of radiography, that's like a layman's understanding, is the radiology. The radiologist, interpret the images, and while the radiographers take the shots, take the pictures of the image, the radiographs and everything. So after my studies as a radiographer medical student, which is I'm going to graduate next year, I'm looking forward to going back to med school to get a degree, MBBS degree in radiology. And before then, I moved into med school to study radiology in MBBS. I'm looking forward to working as a radiographer like for 3 to 5 years. Gather some resources that would foot me during my studies and radiology. So I'm looking forward to being a radiology because I want that title of being a doctor. Whenever you call my name, add that title, Doctor Ransom. So that's bygone. So using my writing skill, I'm looking forward to being an author of so many books, in the future, because that has been my plans to one day write a book, that also talks about the nitty-gritties of medical terminologies and people looking forward to being a freelance medical writer. And I'm trying to like bridge that gap or something. So looking forward to using my content to, enlighten the audience, make them to be aware of the, medical terminologies and also what medical content writing is all about in industry. So yeah, and also creating some ebooks, that will also help people because I was once in that situation when I hadn't no option like how to start up as a medical professionally. So through the helps of some ebooks and some courses I wrote that helped me, come out from my restraint. So kudos to those ebooks. And so yeah, I'm gonna also create some ebooks that will also help people out there, and also my radiology skills and my radiography skills, helping patients to get my one of my top goals is for the patient. What I was my second year. I learned about psychology in radiography that talks about the patient being the king in the hospital setting. So in my studies, I'm not also focused on the grades. I'm also focused on the knowledge or the knowledge I'm going to gain from it because lives and different lives are going to be in my hands. So I don't want to kill people. I want to help people through my practice, in radiography and also radiology, and also help patients to be comfortable because there are some patients that suffer a lot of disease that they will hear and get over or something. So I'll help to also make the patients really cool and happy with everything they're doing. So this is a little bit of what I'm going to do.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, we've now come to the last question, which I think is for all our viewers and for all our watchers, will be really great for them to have to know your advice on this. And it's all about what advice would you give to students or for professionals interested in entering the field of medical content creation, medical content writing. What advice would you give to them?
I'll just say three advices for them. The first advice is you have to have solid foundation in medical terminologies, like I said before. As a medical student, also you have a background into medical terminologies, so you should have a solid foundation. I know I added that because you're gonna work on some project that requires that skill. And you also have to have a research skill. You need to increase your research skills, take some courses, read some books, and research help you grow in your research skills. And also, the third one is you need to be patient. Hey, if you want to be a medical writer, you need to be patient. You don't just grow and become very successful content writer overnight. It takes a couple of patience and determinations, to get to that height or that height you want, as a very successful content writer. So just be patient. If you want to move into medical writing, just if you don't have a portfolio, don't have anything, just write. Look for Medium. I would suggest Medium is a very free. If you want to pay for it, cool. If you don't want to pay, cool. It's a free app that helps you create a portfolio of where you can upload your writings and everything. So I really advise them to, and just be attentive, adherent, adhere to ethical standards. Okay, I'm talking about being adherent to ethical standards, because you're going to work with pharmaceutical companies, healthcare companies, and personal clients, and they really need you to follow some guidelines. So you need to be also, humble to also follow that guideline. So just be yourself, have a solid foundation in medical technologies. Make sure you are good in your researches, and you're good to go.
Thank you. And yeah, we've now come to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much, Ransom, for all the amazing information that you shared. It's been great to learn more about yourself, but also to learn more about your content writing, but also your journey as a medical student. Before I hand over to you to let us know where people can connect with you, just want to say wish you all the best as you are in your final year. We wish you all the best with sort of your next steps. Wish you all the best with your graduation as well. But yes, if there are people who, they want to maybe see your YouTube channel, they want to follow you on Instagram or LinkedIn, could you please let us know where they can find all your information?
Okay, on LinkedIn, my name is Ransom Onyema. The name is on the screen, just on all platforms, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and also on YouTube. Just my name, and you're good to go. Now we're going to add the link on the description below also.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you to you, our wonderful audience, for coming back for another episode. If you like this episode, a like, comment, subscribe. It's always appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss any other episodes of Behind the Curtain or any of the other podcasts on the Pick Up the Mic channel, please make sure you click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. If you are interested in receiving some perks, maybe you're interested in learning some new things about the podcast, whether you're interested in seeing some behind the scene things, maybe you're even interested in receiving some merchandise, then please either become a YouTube channel member, which you can find in the link below, or subscribe to our Patreon page, which you can also find through the link below. And finally, if you're interested in our other channels, as I mentioned, we have 3 other channels. So we have the Two Maces channel, which looks at sci-fi and fantasy. We have the Senseis of Anime channel that looks at all things anime related. And finally, we have the Pick Up the Controller channel, which is all focused on the world of gaming. So yeah, if you've got any interest in any of those, the links are on our main page. So if you click on if you click on Pick Up the Mic at the bottom of the video, it'll take you to our main page, and you'll see the links to all of those 3 channels at the top. But yeah, this is the end of today's episode. Join us next time where we talk with another guest speaker and we have a deeper conversation on another topic. So that's bye from us here. Wishing you all the best and have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeffrey. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.